Thank you for joining us for this is the third part of our webinar series on managing pavements around facility operations. And today we're going to be talking about some case studies. So just a little bit about Benchmark. Benchmark is a roof and pavement consulting company. We have two offices, one in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and one in Waukesha, Wisconsin. We have about 115 employees, and the main services that we provide are evaluation and asset development, design bid services, construction phase services. We can also help you manage your fleet of roof and pavement assets through program management services. And we also have our own UAV imagery. At the end of the day, our promise is to keep your best interests in mind. Today's presenters are Troy Kaiser and myself, Elise Schmidt. Troy is a senior consultant with Benchmark, and he's been with us for about 20 years, been in the industry since 1984. And you've seen Troy's face if you've been a part of these last few webinars, because he has been a part of both webinar 1 and 2, and we are excited to have him with us today. I'm Elise Schmidt. I'm our operations manager, as well as one of our pavement account managers at Benchmark. So we're excited to be with you today. All right, so our key objectives for this webinar series was really to help you understand the key aspects to planning a pavement project around facility operations. And we really designed this three-part series to kind of guide you through all the different complexities, the nuances of a pavement project, to really help you mitigate the operational disruption, as well as maximizing efficiency throughout the facility and throughout the project. So if you missed any of our prior webinars in this three-part series, the first one was on the how and the why. So we really spent some time introducing the fundamentals of managing the pavement projects. Last week, we brought to you a panel of our pavement consultants. We had Troy as well as Riley and Jason join us. And we spent a lot of time answering questions live that you had. And then today, now we're going to end it with walking you through some real life 6 projects. We're going to walk you through real life case studies and just kind of what we learned throughout those projects and what made those projects successful. So the projects we're going to walk you through today are going to range anywhere from retail type projects to distribution center projects. We have a couple of warehouse and plant combo projects. And then also a corporate office building. So we tried to pick a wide variety. We've got hundreds, probably thousands of projects we could share with you, but we tried to pick a wide variety of projects that we could tailor to the attendees attending today. So certainly if you have any questions, we encourage you to put your questions in the chat. We will do our best to either answer questions throughout the presentation or take a little bit of time at the end to answer your questions. So with that, I am going to hand it off to Troy to jump into case study number 1.
Thanks, Elise. So for our first case study, this is a retail site, store. It's in Metairie, Louisiana, which is a suburb of New Orleans, on the north side of New Orleans, right on Lake Pontchartrain. Very busy site. I was very surprised how busy it was when I went down there to do the design. This area was a wetland that was filled to expand the New Orleans area many years ago. So most of your major buildings, commercial buildings, are built on pilings or wood posts that are driven into the ground down to the bedrock to keep them from settling. But unfortunately, the parking lots and all the surrounding islands and landscape areas around the buildings are not built on pilings. So it creates a very challenging, creates a challenge for the design because they're settling as much as 5-6 inches, from when they were first constructed. And if you try to, you can't really dig down and stabilize the areas because you'll never hit hard ground because it's mush all the way down. So our plan was to try to build on top of what was there without disturbing it and using it as a kind of a floating slab for the new construction. So like I mentioned, the sidewalks were settled, the pavements were settled pretty severely. Another challenge was the building was not owned by our client. They were just a renter, but as part of the rental agreement, they were in charge of maintaining and repairing the parking lot. And the parking lot was also shared with an outlot, a very popular restaurant. So that created the challenge of every day around noon, it would get extremely busy, and then carried on through dinner and into the evening. So um, that was those are some of the challenges we faced when we first started looking at this site. Okay, so what we needed to do is we needed to maintain customer access while we were doing the project. We had to maintain access for the neighboring restaurant as well, while fixing the settling areas. Like I mentioned, we were raising the grades all the way around, and that included curb repairs, sidewalk repairs before the actual pavement went down. Most of the pavement was an overlay. Some of the concrete work, we actually did overlays over the top of existing concrete walks with concrete, pinned it into the lower uh, pavements just to get those grades up. If you look at the picture on the lower right there, um, that is the work areas. It was broken down into about 5 phases. You can see the main building is our client, where our client is. The building in the lower right is the restaurant. And then in the opposite corner of the restaurant is kind of a small loading dock area. They didn't have semis. At least I didn't think they did. It looked like it was built for more for straight trucks, but occasionally a short semi would come in for deliveries, which we didn't know till construction. And then there's dumpsters in that area, and we had to maintain those as well, keeping those open during construction. So, unlike some of the projects we do, the phasing had to be done where the concrete crew would come in, get all their work done in phase one, and then they would have to leave because of the need for parking stalls. We couldn't start any of phase two until phase one was done, and the same thing for phase three until phase two was done. So that just adds a whole nother logistics problem, because when that crew leaves, they just can't go wait a block away until the paving's done and then come back. So they would get sent to other projects, and then sometimes there you can get a lag time because they don't want to leave that project till it's done. Fortunately, the contractor did a really good job. I think there was only a couple days of delays where we had to wait for the concrete crew to come back to start this next phase after one phase was completed. Um, as far as coordinating with the restaurant there, we were very lucky. The owner of the franchise, he was just extremely happy to get a new parking lot. So he said, I don't care about delays, which is very unusual, or losing parking. Just get it done, and we'll make it up." But he was so happy to get a new parking lot because it was in poor condition, and it wasn't a real nice placemat for his business. We got the dumpster schedule. We found out when that was coming in. So we tried to work around the dumpster area so that it was open when the truck would come very early in the morning to load the dumpsters. So we had to come in even earlier than he did and move the barrels so that he knew he could pull in there. Because if he left, they would have no place to put their garbage and it would overflow. We also coordinated when the delivery drivers did show up, which we had no control of when they came. We made sure that they were able to get through the construction zone to the loading dock in the back. We actually helped them carry some of the things that they were delivering if they couldn't get right to the dock. The contractor was very good about that. And another issue with this project was on the back side of the store is a residential area, and we were starting very early. And we went and met with the residents ahead of time to let them know that there would be construction going on for a few weeks early in the morning, so that we didn't get any complaints coming in. So all part of that communication, so that when that phase in the back of the building was done, they weren't calling the store or calling the police and complaining, which I've had happen before. Another thing we found when we were on site was a lot of the people that were parking here weren't customers and weren't going, or employees. They were parking here and going they were employees of the businesses next door in several directions. And so we had to go meet with those businesses as well, and let them know that their employees would have to find places to park other than these parking lots while we were doing the work. And I think the owner actually decided to tell them that it wasn't good for them to work there or to park there even after the project was done, because it was taking away from their customers parking. So we worked around the site, starting with phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four, and I think we ended up doing it in 5 phases, and the project went very smoothly. Very few complaints from the customers. We did have a few grumblings that they couldn't find a parking spot right up front, but overall, the client and, like I said, the neighboring restaurant were very happy with how the project went.
That's a lot of different people, Troy, for such this is a relatively smaller size project for us. And it's just amazing the number of people that you had to interact with and the number of stakeholders that were impacted by just varying businesses, the residents. That's just incredible.
Right, and we tried communicating before the project started, but then with all the curveballs that were thrown during the project, there was a lot of meetings and going and meeting with people the first week when we found out what the actual situation was during the week, and just talking through it, and everybody was very friendly, and it went very well. So here's some photos. This is the parking in front of the store. You can see how steep it is going up to the sidewalks in front of the store. That was asphalt there. We decided to re-pour those in concrete. So if it settled in the future, concrete's obviously a rigid pavement, so you wouldn't get a settling and depressions like you can get with asphalt. And we raised that concrete about 4 inches above the existing asphalt out in the driveway there. And that allowed us to match that concrete and do a 4-inch overlay over the top of the existing asphalt without having to tear it out and potentially getting into the soft materials underneath, which would have been a big expense, and probably you wouldn't know where to stop digging once you got into that soft material. So here's the concrete after it was poured in the front. You can see it's not as steep. It actually turned out very nice. Some curb stops in there. We matched the sidewalk when we raised the grade, so we put these curb stops in to keep the cars from blocking the walkway in front of the store, which, because this was in New Orleans, we didn't have to worry about snowplow, so it was a good option to go with. The photo on the right is actually the walkways going down to the existing city street had to be ADA compliant for handicap. And that was the concrete that which we actually did a concrete overlay over the top of the existing walkway to accommodate our new asphalt overlay. And you can see it is much higher than the existing asphalt. And we did the ADA parking was in the row of stalls, the first row of stalls away from the building. And we broke that up into 2 phases. So we did maintain 3 handicap stalls in front of this store for the 2 phases that were done in front of the store. On the left here, you can see we matched that sidewalk. We had to put these decorative planters in there because after we got it done, people started parking on the sidewalk, and we didn't want to just put curb stops there. We thought they were ugly, so we got these nice decorative planters with fleur-de-lis markings on the side and planted flowers in there. The owner was very happy with that. The front parking lot on the right here kind of shows the final product when we finished phase 2 and 3. Just turned out really nice, really dressed up the property. And though it was a pain for, I think it was a 4-week or 5-week project, it turned out really nice. And just wanted to show you, this is what the pavement looked like when we started on the left. You can see it's all alligator cracked. You can't really get a sense for the settling, but there is like 4 to 5 inch settling along that curb on the left side there. And then another shot of the new pavements in the front of the lot, just really dressed the site up with minimal disruptions.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. Sounds like phasing was definitely key when you talk about, a 5-week project, smaller retail type facility, but needing to maintain access and parking at all times. And
Yeah,
sounds like
the big key was the contractor being able to bring the crews back as needed with just only a few days delay, because the project could have really dragged out if they would have left, and then it would have been a week delay until they could start phase 2. But I give them a lot of credit for how well it went.
were the contractors asphalt and concrete crews, were they in-house crews, or was one of them a crew that was subbed out? Do you know?
One was a subcontractor, but it was one that they use exclusively.
Okay.
And they were based about 2 hours away. So it's not like they were a local contractor. So that made it even more impressive that they kept those delays to a minimum.
Sure, absolutely. All right, well, we're going to jump into the second case study here. So this case study is a high-use distribution center. The ultimate goal was to improve the capacity and traffic flow of this facility. Trucks were actually backing up onto the roadway outside the facility, which was causing a lot of complaints. So during the design phase of this project, the ultimate goal was to increase the capacity within the entrance drive to the facility. So this is the entrance drive here that you see on the screen. And also as part of this project, the client wanted to incorporate technology upgrades that included license plate readers, as well as they wanted to improve the condition of their guardhouse by adding a restroom for easy access for their employees. So this is actually a picture here you can see of the trucks. This is that entrance roadway that I showed you on the screen before, and you can see the trucks backing up here on the roadway. And so there were actually photos out there on social media and stuff. Yes. After our client reached out to us. We actually encountered some photos on social media that people had been posting about their frustrations with these some of the truckers themselves were extremely frustrated about the bottlenecks that they were experiencing here. So the challenges that we faced at this specific site, was that all work had to be done during business hours without compromising the quality of the installation at this extremely busy facility. The facility does operate 24/7, but the contractor was not working 24/7 on the projects. And then the reason that the client wanted to add the license plate readers was to help the trucks check in faster when entering the facility. So we were expanding the area, but also adding some of the license plate readers. So what was our approach to this project? This portion of the project took about 6 weeks to complete. And as Troy talked about phasing in the first scenario, phasing was really key to the overall success of this project. The truck entry lanes were built one lane at a time. And we started by widening out the outside lanes first, which allowed more room for future phases. So here's a picture you can see. This is lane 3 here, which we were widening out. And the 1 here represents lane 1, which we were also widening. And then lane 2 was the third phase of this project, the last piece that we completed. And that's also where they installed the card readers and the new islands. So this project you can see here, this is an overlay of the new layout versus the old layout of the facility. And we started with actually lane 3. So we started by widening out lane 3 first. This shows a little bit more about the phasing here. You can see this is that same entrance roadway. Phase 1 was lane 3 here, which is where we started the project and spent time widening out lane 3. Then we jumped over to lane 1 and widened out lane 1, you can see here as well, which really allowed for more room to maneuver within lane 2 in the center of the project, which was phase 3 of this project. So let's jump into a couple of the photos here. You can see first photo here. Oh, I'm sorry, it went too fast here. First photo here, this is showing phase 1 here, which was that widening of lane 3. And then 2 of the check-in lanes and the original guardhouse remained operational with proper traffic control throughout the phase to make sure, you can see the guard shack here, to make sure that trucks were able to still enter the facility without backups. The last thing we wanted was more backups during the construction of the project, because that was the ultimate reason we were constructing this project. These photos show the new widening of the lane with reinforced concrete. So this project was spec'd with reinforced concrete, and you can see here, this is where they're putting in the new curb. They're setting the forms for all of the concrete work, putting in all of the reinforcement that needs to be done before they can actually come in and pour the concrete. And then the photo here on the right shows the new concrete that was installed in this same area. The area was added during the phase. This area was added so that we could, we're expanding this area in phase 1 so that we could utilize this area in phases 2 and 3 of the project for trucks entering the facility. Here's some additional photos. So this is actually phase 2 of the project that shows where we were widening lane 1 on the opposite side of where we had already widened lane 3. And so you can see here the new traffic control that is in place, and we're working on widening this lane here. And this is an interesting photo. So this photo actually shows here, you can see on the left-hand side, this is a temporary guardhouse that was brought in for this project. And so this is the temporary guardhouse here. And you can see here's the new guardhouse here in the back of the photo. And so this is really, I know we talked last week as well about the importance of really understanding the constraints of the project. And if you're going to need temporary guardhouse, make sure you're working that into the design phase, that you're figuring that into your budget to make. And this temporary guardhouse allowed this facility to continue to let trucks in and not have larger delays during the construction of the project. These photos here show the pavement work included new concrete pads and curb islands for those license plate readers. So here's the new concrete pad. And then you can see here the new islands that we're framing up in that center lane of the facility, which is where they were installing the electronic license plate readers to speed up the check-in process of those trucks. And then the final photos we wanted to share with you for this case study, this really shows phase 3, which is that center lane. Here's that island we showed you in the last image as well. And you can see here that there's trucks being routed in on both sides to allow access to the facility while we're constructing the middle lane. And then you can see here in the left-hand photo, all of the concrete work was either performed overnight or early morning hours. While this this facility did operate 24/7, we were able to get a feel for the truck traffic entering the facility, and there's definitely a lot less trucks coming in overnight. And so they did a lot of the concrete work overnight or first thing in the morning before the temperatures got too hot and the facility got too busy. And really, at the end of the day, Troy, very similar to your project, while a very different type of project, the goal was to keep the facility operational at all times, allowing those trucks to come in through this entrance without the trucks backing up on that roadway. All right, Troy.
Okay. Case study number 3 is another industrial site. It is a manufacturing facility in Iowa. It's on there's not a lot of room. A lot of these sites we go to, there's a lot of big areas for truck parking. This is basically a centralized manufacturing facility with an access road that goes all the way around with loading docks and receiving and shipping and dumpsters and different access points all the way around the site. And we did start at this site and did phase 1 a few years ago, and this year we did phase 2, which was a lot more complicated because it included a lot more of those docks. And while I was involved with the design, I was not there for the construction, but Jason, who you saw last week, was there. And so in my preparation for doing this presentation, I realized that this is probably the most complex project I've ever seen as far as timing for the reconstruction. The whole site is being done in concrete, which adds a whole new level of preparation and cure times. It's with asphalt, you can go in, you can mill it off one day and pave it the next day, which I'll show in another case study I have. But that concrete pavement just adds a whole new level of timing and prep work, a lot of prep work for setting the forms, setting the rebar, and then obviously pouring the concrete and then the following cure time. The big problem that Jason has was there's a lot of raw ingredients coming in for their production, and that all had to be coordinated. How were we going to keep that material flowing on the site while we worked on some of these different areas? And so we'll go on to the next slide, Elise. So what Jason had to do is he had to learn all the different dock doors, what they were used for, what the delivery times were, the frequency of deliveries, how long each delivery would take, because sometimes it was a tanker truck that backed in, but then it had to sit there for 2 hours to unload into the indoor tanks. And so this, if you look at this plan right here, this was the original phasing plan. and it was broken up into one, two, three, four, five different areas. And then if you go to the next slide, here's the actual how it was built, and you can see it's still five, but there's 5A, 5B, and you can see what I was talking about. It's basically an access drive that goes all the way around the plant with loading docks and tanks and unloading and loading areas that needed to be done. Traffic here was one way because they couldn't. There's not enough room to have two-way traffic. So that just tells you how tight it was. But so Jason had to coordinate timing, and the facility would stockpile materials inside the plant prior to that door being done where that material came in. Either they stockpiled it on pallets if it was like box products, or they made sure all the tanks, if it was tanks inside that were holding the product, were full, and they could keep the capacity stockpiled while the reconstruction of that area was being done. So that's how the project went from phase to phase to phase. It had to be started noon on this day and had to be completed by noon 2 days later. Otherwise, the facility wouldn't be able to produce the food products that they were making. The other thing was the dumpsters. They've got roll-off dumpsters that were inside the building, and those doors had to be accessible. And what Jason was able to do was they were having pickups twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, to get rid of cardboard materials and other things. And so he worked it out where they would do the last pickup at noon and not in the afternoon. And right away, the crew jumped right in after that truck left, started excavating the area, doing the prep work, getting the concrete poured using a 24-hour mix, so that within 2 days, the dumpster truck could come back and start hauling the materials away that had piled up. And that's what he did. They created an area where they could stack the cardboard and other debris that wasn't biodegradable, food product kind of thing. And they stacked it up inside. And then finally, when it was open, they were able to load the dumpster up, haul it away, and have another dumpster there right away to get that stockpiled material cleared out of the building. So just a really complicated project as far as just precise timing. I was actually amazed when I went through Jason's note on this. So here we have some pictures. You can see how tight the site is. You've got an access roadway where trucks can get by, but right where you're working, you can see the loading docks going up into the access doors, and inside, I'm not sure if that had a dumpster in it or maybe that was where a tanker backed in and unloaded. But just a really complicated site, and there were some truck areas where they put trailers on the outside, but it was so tight the trailers hung over into the driveways. So they had to find areas off site to put those trailers while those roadways were being done, just to give you a feel for what the conditions were like. Here was another problem that I never thought of during design. Where do you put all the materials? When you're pouring concrete, you have to have all this rebar. This site had full excavation with fabric going down over unstable soils before the stone base went in, and they had to find places to stockpile all these materials so they were readily available, because timing was critical. You couldn't say, well, we'll get the material, we can run and get more. No, it had to be done now. So Jason had to find areas that were basically not landscape areas, but rock areas off the pavement to store all these materials and make them available when they were needed. Here's some more pictures. You can see the tight traffic control on the right there and the tight quarters. On the left here, they removed did the excavation, put the stone in, and then they ramped the stone up to that particular door so that it was accessible until the timing was right when that door was going to be shut down for the 2-day period. Then that extra gravel would be removed from the ramp, and then it would be formed and rebar set for the new concrete, which is what they're doing on the right here. You can see they got the area graveled, excavated, stoned, and they're setting the rebar in the forms for the next pour. And on the left, you can see some of the, if you back up at least, some of the barrier blocks that were used to keep trucks from driving into these areas while they were being done. And then the next photo, last week I mentioned my most complicated project I had, and it was a truck entrance. It's very similar to the one that Elise just talked about. Multiple lanes, 24/7. And what I mentioned last week is we paved it at night, and that's why it's got this kind of an eerie feel here. It's early morning, and that's that boom truck that we used, where we built a pad, set the boom truck off to the side, had a little access road so the cement trucks could unload into the boom truck hopper, and then that boom was able to extend and allow them to pour the very large area that they were doing. And then as trucks came in and out, they actually drove underneath the boom on the open lane. So I found that photo since last week. I wanted to share that with those that were on the call last week. Some of the ideas that contractors can come up with that'll help get these projects done in an efficient manner.
Yeah, that's awesome, Troy. It's so incredible how different every single project that we build is and the experiences that you consultants have. I feel like Jason's title for that project that you just finished doing the case study for should have been like Chief Coordinating Officer, because he did spend an awful lot of time just coordinating, which made the facility's job easier because we're already impacting their job from a negative perspective a lot of times when we're coming in to rehabilitate pavements. And so being able to help do some of that facilitation, I know we actually just met with that client yesterday, and I know that they really did appreciate that extra coordination that Jason was able to provide for that project.
Yeah, it was a lot of work for him, but it was critical to making sure the project went as smoothly as it did. And it's a big credit to him and the contractor and everybody involved that there were no snafus, where they never shut down production during the whole
Yeah,
project.
that's where quality of a contractor plays into this too, making sure that the contractor really understands what they're getting themselves into, especially in some of these challenging projects.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump into case study number 4 here. This one happens to be a premier mall that's in New Jersey that has a lot of kind of top of the line anchor stores, higher end anchor stores. The mall has an extremely small footprint. It's not like a large regional mall. It's located in a very busy business district with also high end hotels and restaurants, as well as a lot of housing in this area. So it's an extremely busy area. Traffic at the mall is very heavy during normal business hours. And most of the parking spaces at this particular facility are actually parking ramps with several surface parking lots as well. The surface parking lots, we've worked with this mall, I think, for about 15 years now. And their surface lots outside of the anchor stores fill up almost immediately as soon as the mall opens. And actually, they don't empty until about an hour after closing. So I'm not sure where all of these people go within this facility, but it fills up pretty quickly and it's full most of the day. And then also the roadways are generally 2-lane roads with many height restrictions due to the parking ramps and the bridges at the facility. Corners are very tight. Troy talked about tight corners at that distribution center or warehouse that he was working at. There's some very tight corners in some of the areas of this mall that limit the routes that trucks can take to travel around the mall's roadway to be able to get their deliveries there. The challenges of this particular project, the rehabilitation of the asphalt roadways and parking lots in a busy environment with lots of customers, lots of foot traffic, was really the biggest challenge we were facing here. Is how are we going to get this done safely for people with limited disruptions? We also faced the challenge of the anchor stores and the interior stores. They didn't want us to do any construction that was going to affect their sales. And I'm sure you know this if you shop at malls, but the anchor stores sales are not on the same weekends, right? So one might have one the first weekend of the month, one might have one the second weekend of the month. And so there was very little time for us to be able, very little downtime. And then we can't work at this facility over the weekends because, believe it or not, weekends are even busier than during the week. Even though there's a lot of business traffic, this is an extremely busy retail location on the weekends. So throughout the project, we worked with both of the mall and the store management to all of the various stores, to Troy's point in his first scenario, to come up with a solution that would meet their needs. And again, this involved multiple stakeholders. We weren't just meeting with stakeholders from our primary client, but also meeting with any of their internal stakeholders within some of their businesses that leased from them as well. So what was our approach? How did we handle these challenges that we were facing? Our approach for this project was night work. We chose to do night work because it really seemed to satisfy all parties involved. And we've been doing successful nighttime projects at this facility for years now. It was really the only time when the construction could be performed at a reasonable and cost-effective pace to get the work completed timely. In Troy's case, they didn't want a project. His first retail facility, we broke it into 5 phases. It took 5 weeks. They didn't want it to be done over a 5-week period. The sooner we could get in and out, the better. And so it also didn't really interfere with the business hours of the mall. But we do want to note that working at night definitely poses some issues to both the mall and the contractor that we had to deal with. That was kind of another challenge. So night work poses greater safety threat for the construction workers. Safety is always something that is of utmost importance. And so there was a greater level of traffic control that was required throughout the site to make sure that you had the right signage, the right type of traffic control. We'll share with you a couple of those photos. This particular mall did have lighted parking lots, but we also brought in light stands. The contractor rented those and placed them in the construction zones to make sure that there was proper lighting for those workers' safety. It can also be very difficult from a contractor's perspective to schedule crews at night because crew members can only work so many hours. And so if they're working during the day and then also trying to come in at night, this is why you may need to find not a smaller contractor that only has 1 or 2 crews, but that you find a larger contractor that's accustomed to having a daytime crew and a nighttime crew. You really want to make sure that those crews working at night are accustomed to working at night and understand what it takes. Another challenge that we had in this particular location in New Jersey was that asphalt plants needed to be willing to stay open. So when the contractors are bidding the projects, it's really important that they understand that they're bidding this work to be done at night because you want to make sure that they're getting pricing from the right asphalt suppliers. Not all of the asphalt plants are willing to stay open. So that was definitely a constraint. And then depending on the crew and how good the contractor is, the surface appearance of the final asphalt or concrete may not be as high a quality if done at night versus during the day. And this is really where the right contractor, they won't struggle with being able to get the right type of surface look, but you want to make sure you've got a contractor that is used to working nights and that you can count on them for that. And then another challenge that we faced here was even though we could work nights, we had to make sure that all of the traffic control was back up, reset, and that all contractors were off-site 1 hour prior to any deliveries and prior to any employees showing up because they really didn't want any sort of disruption. And then just another thing to note about the nighttime work, it really sometimes can add 15 to 20%. It can increase the cost 15 to 20%. At least that's what we saw this particular project out in New Jersey, but the client has always been willing to pay for that. So this is a copy of the phasing plan here. So this particular area was going to be done in 3 different phases, with the pink phase being done first. And you'll see here that we've got a couple of keyed work notes, and these keyed work notes are really notes for the contractors to understand the intent. The more detailed, the better during the bidding process. The key work notes mention about the concrete work needing to be done before the work in phases 2 and 3. And it also talks about making sure we have the right type of signage and road closure signs. Another thing that's really important on many projects, but specifically when you're talking retail type projects, maybe you're talking a lot of foot traffic, a lot of pedestrian traffic, is traffic control. And making sure that you have traffic control plans. Those are essential. You don't want to be coming up with the general traffic control flow after you've awarded the project to a contractor, because you could get sticker shock with a change order for all the additional costs for traffic control measures. So you want to make sure that if traffic control, you can see here, this particular example, we've got keyed work notes in our legend. And this is just for 1 phase of work, but it specifically notes on the plan where you see an A, it's going to be where there's a road closed ahead sign. If there's no right turns, it would show up with an F. And so it really tells the contractor very clearly what type of signage is required to be able to maintain access and to be able to maintain safety throughout the duration of the project. Super important, especially when we're dealing with customers, employees, pedestrian foot type traffic. So let's jump into a couple of the photos here. You can see these photos. The photo on the left is really highlighting the nighttime work and those light stands. Not the best quality picture, but it's the best one that we could show you. It's hard to get some good pictures at nighttime here. And then you can also see here in the photo on the right, they're starting to do some of the concrete repair work in front of the store. And, this is the main entrance here, one of the main entrances to this store. And so there's absolutely no way that they want contractors in here working, shutting down this roadway here during the day. So we're coming in at night and replacing those concrete slabs. These photos show here, you can see, again, same entrance. The photo on the right, the contractor is wrapping up. They've installed the concrete. They're putting the surface, taking care of the surface of that concrete. And it's now daytime. So it's early morning. It's light outside. They're finishing the final prep of the concrete to make sure that it looks right. And then you can see here in the photo on the left, we've got the proper traffic control. So in this particular case, you want to make sure, barrels or cones were not enough. But you see here the traffic control fencing, because it's critical to make sure the last thing you want is somebody walking through your brand new concrete because they think they can go around a cone. I don't know how often you guys have seen that, but I've seen it many times when I'm visiting stores myself, how often people want to access through here. Well, this fence says no entry allowed. And so you'll see here that, this is a top-notch contractor, and they understand, what the client's needs were and met those really well. These photos here for this project, this is the roadway work. You can see here again, the contractors were working at night, relatively lit facility at nighttime with the additional portable lights that were brought in. But this gave the contractor the ability to do any of the prep work, the milling and the paving in this ring roadway at night so that they're not disrupting the flow of customers coming into the facility. In this particular project, it also allowed the crews to work in a larger area. And so we were able to get the project done quite a bit quicker. And then final photos for this case study. Again, this is just what I thought was a really good photo showing the necessary traffic control that is set up on this project. So work was done at night, and then you can see the portable lights here in the background. But by the time we're reopening the site up for operations in the morning, this area is clearly blocked off. People know someone's not going to try to drive into it. They're not going to try to walk into it. Completely fenced off because we've got the proper traffic control. And so in order to maintain facility operations, you want to make sure that traffic control is a key aspect in your projects. And then this is just a quick picture of the final view where they came in and paved the surface at night, striped it, and we were ready to open it up for operations first thing in the morning. All right, Troy, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Elise. Case study number 5. This is another industrial site. It is basically a distribution center. It's open 24/7. All the asphalt drive lanes in front of the docks and the trailer parking yard needed to be reconstructed by milling and placing new asphalt at a thicker depth so that it would last longer. Also, the truck entrance exit had concrete areas in need of replacement and asphalt areas that needed to be converted to concrete because of the concentrated truck traffic in that area. The work also included repairing failing curbs, some of the dolly pads, and any drainage structures that needed to be repaired prior to the start of the paving operations. So the challenge was to get these areas reconstructed while keeping the facility in full operation. This included giving the contractor as much area to work in as possible for each phase to keep the construction costs down and get the project done faster. We were lucky it was a local contractor and a very good contractor that owned their own asphalt plant, so they were able to dedicate that when we needed it. So the approach was to convert two-way traffic for the over-the-road trucks to one-way traffic using the existing truck entrance exit lanes as an entrance only. Luckily here, there was an alternate exit that wasn't being used, exit entrance that wasn't being used that already had a guard shack at it. So we were able to have the overroad trucks come in where they normally do, but then exit at the other side of the building without having to bring in any kind of temporary structures for the guard people. Um, the contractor had to maintain a 12-foot wide roadway through each phase so that the trucks could get around this facility as in that one-way direction. I will note that the spotter trucks, we did allow those to go both ways, but because they're shorter, typically have better drivers, we didn't think that was going to be an issue, and it wasn't. Um, we also were fortunate. This was another site where our client didn't own the building, but had to maintain the pavements on their half of the building. The other half of the building at the time of construction was not being occupied. So we were fortunate that we had all the truck slips on that side of the building to park trailers out of the way. And that's where we were able to use that other alternate entrance exit. It was a big benefit for this project. Um, what we did here is the milling. The contractor came in, did all the milling at night. So milling operations would go all night, and then the next morning, the paving crew would come in and fill the areas in that were milled the night before to keep the project moving at a quicker pace and keep each phase as short as possible. They did start the concrete work first, doing the curbs and dolly pads and the catch basin work in phase one, but they were able to move into the next phases while the milling and paving was doing in phase one by using um, isolated traffic control for the concrete crews. So here was the original phasing plan. You can see our client had, they rented the upper part of the building. The lower part of the building was unoccupied. And so you can see the trucks all come in on the right side in that main truck entrance. And then there's a small trailer parking yard just inside the truck entrance. And then your dry docks or non-refrigerated product is on the upper side of the building. And then the smaller areas on the left side of this drawing, including the longer area number 4, part of that, those are the reefer docks or the refrigerated docks. So we found out that we could have 1/3 or 1/4 of the reefer docks at any one time, and then also have a portion of the dry docks at any one time. So what we did was during phase one, when we were doing the trailer parking area, we also did phase one of the phases of the reefer docks. So this drawing here is the actual as-built. This is how it was done. And this reflects if you look at that purple area at the top of the drawing, it kind of reflects that 12-foot wide area that had to be maintained for the trucks to maintain counterclockwise movement through the site. So when we did phase three, right next to the trailer parking area on the right, the contractor came in and right away did the 12-foot drive lane on the outside. So that was completely done for the next phases. So when he did phase 4, 5, 6, and 7, that was already there and maintained for trucks to go around him. Now, here is a close-up of where the truck entrance is, and you can see, like Elise mentioned on the other plan, there's work notes for what kind of traffic control is required, including variable message boards. Those flashing electronic boards alerted the truck drivers that as they came in, it was going to be one-way traffic, and that they'd have to go all the way around the building and exit in the, you can see the other exit to the left here that doesn't have any coloring on it. But so by having one way going through the truck entrance, we were able to reconstruct it one half at a time by switching traffic from either the right side or the left side. And it just made it much easier to get those areas reconstructed without having to worry about flagmen having traffic going both ways. So here's a photo of that entrance. You can see the traffic control setup and the variable message board that was there to alert the trucks. So when they came on site, they knew what to do, and we didn't have to stop and tell every driver how to get around the facility.
Troy, any idea what a variable message board costs throughout a duration of a project? Is there like a daily fee for it? Do you know?
At least I would have. I'll be honest with you. I don't know, and I'd
Okay.
hate to throw out any kind of information like that. We included it in the bid as an item. So for each one that we needed, we had a set price from the contractor before the job started. Again, avoiding any price creep. We had that all included in the bids. So here's some of photos of the pavements beforehand. You can see it was all the asphalt between the concrete docks out to the concrete dolly pads was in very poor condition. The boring showed that the base was actually very hard, but the asphalt was too thin. So it was getting beaten between the truck tires and that hard surface underneath. And we had to get that asphalt out of there, take out a little bit of the stone, increase the pavement thickness to get a long lasting pavement. So this is actually pictures of the entrance, the truck entrance. On the left here, you can see the concrete on the right had started to fail, and it was caused by that catch basin there. Had a hole in it, so the water was coming in, and it was underwashing or undercutting the pavement and causing the concrete slabs to settle and fault. So because we had trucks coming in on the right side, the contractor was able to come in at night, take that concrete out, dig out the stone, and re-pour that concrete while truck traffic was maintained in the one-way direction. And here's the paving operations, actually the milling operation. As you can see, we did all the milling at night. It worked out very well. There was enough lighting between the facility lights and the lights on the equipment. Because we weren't putting new pavement down at night, we didn't have to worry about light plants for that extra lighting. And the contractor came in. We started basically as soon as the paving crew was done from the night before. We started milling the day before. We started milling that night to prep the area for paving the next day. As far as the concrete went, as I mentioned before, we started the concrete dolly pad work and the curb repairs in phase one and just moved right around the site using isolated traffic controls. This is actually phase one in the trailer parking area. Got all that concrete replaced ahead of time before the milling was done. And here's some pictures of the paving. Here you can see milling starting right before night came, so we did get a little bit of daylight. I actually ran the night crews there for the milling, and then the next day they came in and did the paving and got the striping done and had it opened up fairly quickly. And the nice thing about doing the paving during the day, we didn't have any additional charges for the asphalt plant being open. Sometimes those asphalt plants can't run at night because of neighborhoods being close by and the noise. And so by doing the nighttime milling and the daytime paving, it really helped avoid those kind of problems. And some more pictures of the paving and the finished product on the right. It turned out really nice. And we were able to give the contractor some pretty big areas to work in, which really helped.
That's awesome. All right. Well, we can jump into overview number 6 for you, Troy.
Okay, this will be kind of a different one. This is kind of an executive site or a company's campus, an office campus. It's not a retail site. It's not an industrial site. It's roadways, and there's some large parking lots there. And what they wanted us to do was redo the roadways. Had to be done in 3 phases. Between one of the phases we were doing and the main office complex were 2 parking structures where all the employees parked. So we had to maintain access to those parking structures and access from the structures over to the office building. During the project, the client decided to add an extension to one of the roadways, which extended it across the entrance to their only loading docks, where they had a lot of deliveries of straight trucks coming in, dropping off, I'm assuming, paper products and hauling out files or whatever. But it was for not being for being an office facility. I was really surprised at the amount of traffic in that dock. This included curb and gutter repairs and then milling the old pavement off and replacing with new 7 inches of new asphalt. So on the right here, here's basically the project. It's 2 large roadways and then a small area into their IT center, which is basically where they have all their computers. This is up in Minnesota. So phase 1 was the orange roadway, or kind of the main roadway. And you can see it's between the 2 large parking decks. And then phase 2 was the other large roadway, and phase 3 was the smaller IT center. One of the things we had to do during construction was we had to maintain that main intersection between phase 1 and phase 2. So that was a lot of coordination with milling and putting ramps in to allow trucks and delivery trucks to the docks, and also to allow employees to go across that area. And the photo on the left just shows we started like the site before. We started the concrete ahead of time and kept the concrete going right through phase 1, phase 2 using the isolated traffic control. So in phase 1, you can see the 2 large parking decks. Fortunately, there was a concrete walkway that went over to the office building. It did add, we didn't want to truck over the top of that with our paving trucks. We didn't know if it would hold up to that. So it added to the phasing where we had to start paving from the inside out at that concrete crosswalk. And that's what the picture on the right shows, that crosswalk and how the paving crew is working their way from the walkway to the south in that particular photo. Then they'll come back and work their way from the concrete to the north. And we kept that ramped during the milling phase as well. So this is the other challenging part about this site. The loading dock is that little driveway to the lower left, if you can point that out, Elise. That's their loading dock area right in there. And they extended the phase 1 to go across the front of that. So during the project, we paved everything out, and the last section we paved was that little part of that roadway going out. And it was on a Friday afternoon late, but they told us there was a few more deliveries coming in. And the photo on the right shows the concrete dock entrance on the left, and you can see our paving ends of the roadway just past that. But it's a really tight turn. If the trucks come in that way, they got to make that sharp turn across our new pavement. What we're able to do is there's a fire hydrant right there. We got permission from the owner to draw water off that hydrant without setting off any fire alarms. And as soon as the surface was installed and rolled, we got water on that pavement right away. And like Riley mentioned last week, it not only cooled the pavement, but it broke the friction. So as the trucks, and a delivery truck did show up about a half hour after we got done paving. And because it was the middle of summer, it never would have cooled off enough. And because we had that pavement cooled down and watered, the truck was able to come in, make that almost a 90-degree turn into there without scuffing up that new pavement. And then after he left, we continued to water that till we got it down to about 100 degrees, which was only about 10 or 15 degrees above the ambient temperature anyway. So even with challenges like that, you can get these projects done and keep these loading docks open without damaging your new pavement. And that's kind of why we picked this particular case study, to show you that it can be done.
That's awesome, Troy. And I know we've said this a couple of times today, but there's really no 2 projects that are the same. It takes a lot of outside of the box thinking, a lot of cross-functional communication, talking to all of the appropriate stakeholders. I know we talk to a lot of customers every year who just, they let their pavements continue to deteriorate because they can't even fathom how they might be able to manage facility operations while also managing through a pavement project. So appreciate you sharing with us today the case study information that you have shared. And we are right at about time. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to put your questions in the question box. Otherwise, Troy and I just want to say thank you so much for joining us, whether you joined us today or for the entire 3-part series. We are grateful for your time. Benchmark will be sending out a follow-up email with links if you missed any of the priors or you feel like anybody on your team would benefit from this information. We would ask you to please go ahead and share that. But we know time is valuable, and we hope that you felt like this was a beneficial webinar series on how to manage your next pavement project around facility operations. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.